You're watching Moontower Soccer's Story of the Week, where Landon Cottam and Jeremiah Bentley discuss this week's most important, consequential, and interesting Austin FC news.
Austin won a game this week. We should probably talk about that.
They did win a game. We talked about last week how important this one would be, just because it's a tough schedule from here to the end of the season. This is a road game, but a road game against a team who hasn't been that good, who's been in a bad run of form lately. And we said, like, if they're going to win any of them, if you're looking at the slate of games ahead of them, this is one that you'll want to win. And just like would be a really important 3 points to get if they could. They did it. And so I don't think this was a great Austin FC game. I think the first half was, we'll get into some of the wild stuff that happened, but I think Austin was probably the worst team overall in the first half. But there's a lot of, there's some positives we can take away from it, both in the style of play, and then also sometimes I think it's like, it's not our job to say a game was better or worse than what it was. Like the idea of what we're doing is just to say what happened and kind of analyze what and how, right? In a game like this, I think you just say like, it wasn't a great game. There's some positives to take away, and then just thank the Lord that Brad Stuver is our goalkeeper.
Oh, man, yeah. There's no doubt about that. I mean, I think the absolute, and we're going to debate whether this was the best save of the night, but like the biggest moment of the night in terms of game state and game flow has to be Brad Stuver's save of the Henny Mokhtar penalty 7 minutes into the game after a penalty 1 minute into the match, or it's a very different story on the night.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Josh Wolf loves to say, goals change games, and a goal a minute and a half into the game definitely changes the game. And so, I won't argue with you there. I will. I'm not going to say maybe. I'm not even going to tease it like that. I am going to argue with you once we get to this other save. But as far as importance on the match, this one was absolutely bigger.
Yeah, so he has this huge save early, 7 total saves on the night, leading to his 7th clean sheet on the year, team of the match again for the 3rd time. I think there's no doubt that Austin is in better shape than it could be otherwise, except for Brad Stuver, who continues to lead league in saves. So it's just he continues to really lead the club, and I mean it's unfortunate that he doesn't get more notoriety from like the league and maybe even the national team than he does right now because of sort of like the way Austin's playing. But it's great to know, like as an Austin fan, that we've got that super reliable, trustworthy like guy at the back line that can help Austin save itself from itself often.
Yeah, absolutely. One other confusing stat. I'll state what the stat is, then break down what it actually means. So it's post-shot XG minus goals allowed. So if you take the total XG of shots on goal and then subtract the number of goals that were actually allowed, this is by most like analytics folks considered the best way to, like, the best statistic or metric to say how good of a shot stopper is this goalkeeper. Brad Stuver has been one of the best in this metric pretty much all 4 years of Austin FC's existence. And in this game, it was 2, meaning he essentially stopped 2 whole goals from going in over the span of this game. Most of those numbers coming off of 2 shots, but they were a big 2 shots and then a few other pretty big moments as well.
Yeah, and I guess before we move off Brad Stuver, just early on in the show, I was just reminded, because I just bought tickets for it, is that he's going to have his Stuver Social at the pitch on Sunday, September 8th from 3 to 6, which I think, have you been to that before? Jackson,
I don't think so.
At least once. Yeah, it's a fundraiser at the pitch. It's for Equality Texas and Avow. Tickets are $30. Then also, if you want to pay an extra $50, you can like take a shot at Stuver, which is super fun. And he does a really good job of like finding the very serious guys who think they're going to score on him and stopping them, and then like also letting the 2-year-old kids like hammer home goals on him. It's like a super fun event and good to watch. So if you get the chance, like go check that out. Moving on to the offensive side of things, we talked about Driussi at the false 9 against LA, and it may be working and not working both at the same time. The tactics, the lineup was the same. I feel like maybe the tactics were a little bit different. So why don't you run us through that?
Yeah, I think the Nashville game was more or less a continuance of what they were trying to do against LAFC. It seems a bit more fully formed in this Nashville game, and it's going to be very difficult to kind of explain without any visuals in this audio medium exactly what was going on. But a thing, we watched this game live at some friend's house, and I was being mocked by the end of the night, partially because John Gallagher scored. But the other things I was being mocked for were I kept yelling at the screen every time Mikael Dessler or Biru were playing in the midfield. And then also kept calling Mikael Dessler my boyfriend because how much I am in love with the way he plays soccer. But yeah, them rotating in the midfield. So this is like the most total football shit like Austin has ever done and most MLS teams have ever done. The fact that Austin's still not that good and maybe doesn't have the pieces to totally pull it off, they're probably not going to get that much attention for it. But I can't stop thinking about it just because of how much fun this is. So you would have moments where Guilherme Biru, anytime he received the ball wide, he would either dribble inside or he would pass the ball and then do an underlapping run to the inside. And so very often he would end up either like pushing up field inside, but then also if the ball got played backwards, he would just stay there. He would stay in the middle of the field, and it'll almost be a double pivot of Danny Pereira and Guilherme Biru, or sometimes Danny would drop back in between the center backs, and it would be a double pivot of Mikael Dessler and Guilherme Biru. And so that was super cool. But then another thing that was more difficult to see on this broadcast, and I'm very excited to see in person at Q2 whenever you get the full picture, is what was happening around that. So as Biru would come inside, oftentimes Owen Wolf would push out wide to that left-hand side and occupy the space where normally a fullback would be in the build-up. And then Driussi would drop in, that like false nine drop into midfield. And whenever that would happen, the opposite attacking midfielder would run in behind and essentially become the number 9 there. And so there's these really interesting little rotations going on. And like, again, you can't see it super well in the Nashville game, but folks listening, like watch for this at Q2 on Saturday, because it's really interesting. And it sounds complicated and maybe sounds like too complicated, but it's one of those things, if you kind of drill the basics of it and have players who are good enough and just have the instincts to play like this, it's actually quite simple. If somebody vacates a space, somebody else needs to fill that space. And so there's like areas of the field or positions that need, like, you want to be occupied at all times. And as someone moves into one space, someone else fills it. And it was just, they looked really comfortable doing it. And then I saw Kevin Morris posting about like what this system can look like with actual good players, and posted a screenshot of Guilherme Biru playing in midfield. And the reason like why that is important is because imagine putting Jean Kolmanich or Nick Lima playing in that space, receiving in the midfield with pressure around him on the half turn, turning and dribbling at a guy or doing something like that. Like, it just doesn't work. You have to have a specific kind of player to be able to do that. Biru is that player. Dessler is that player. And so all of that, like, I am very excited to see what this can turn into, not just this season, but going forward, to see with a few more upgrades at a few other spots, to see what this team can do. And I know I've said that I would like to replace Josh Wolf in the offseason. If that happens, I hope whoever comes in keeps doing fun stuff like this, because I will always think, like, what if they kind of go in a different direction and we don't get to see this weird fun thing where fullbacks are midfielders and midfielders are wingers and strikers are, like, I don't know. It's just like very exciting to me what this could look like with one more window of a Burrell rebuild.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's I was trying to thinking about a question, but I think ultimately, like, what you're saying is it comes down to having the guys that can actually do this and make this system work, and finally getting the talent that's like acclimated to it, which maybe Austin didn't have before. So, like, how much of that do you think is like a system? Well, I mean, I guess they depend on each other. How much of it is like guys that know how to play soccer in an insightful way, and how much of that is it like a system?
Yes.
Or are they so intertwined it doesn't matter?
Yes, it's both. Because, like, again, if you tell Nick Lima to go into the midfield, it doesn't matter because if you play the ball to him, he's not going to be able to do anything with it there. And so, and then also, it's like you can teach the system to someone who doesn't have the instincts for it, and they're probably going to do a bad job. But whenever you have this system and have guys who are like, oh no, yeah, that makes sense to me, and then they just go out and do it, like, because as much as we talk about Alex Ring and like what he is and isn't, but he is smart and has good instincts, and so him moving in these spaces around Dessler and around Biru and around Bukhari, who's also from the small sample size seems to be a pretty intelligent soccer player as far as just like the game IQ of it. And so just seeing these guys just follow their instincts within this system is, it's not all the way there yet. It's not perfect. We're not the best team in the world. We're not going to go undefeated for the rest of the year, but there's these little sprigs of hope coming up and like something that could turn into something really good.
If you like this video, you can listen to the full episode at moontowersoccer.com or wherever you get your podcasts.